what I have to say, who am I as a person, my story. I'm discovering I like to tell it more and more than just writing it on paper. And also because I've been a quiet person for very long. Now I feel like to be heard, like to really, I have something to say and to share it publicly, not just in my journal or in my little circle, but really to expand this voice.
I appreciate so much that you took time today, Sandra, to speak with me. I'm really looking forward to hearing more about you and the work that you do.
Thank you for the invitation. And I'm just open to the questions and be sharing a bit more of my journey with you. So thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you. You're very welcome. And I'll start by asking you, what first led you to making art? And I think you do collage, you do poetry, different things. So I'll just sort of keep it global and let you respond.
Yeah, so it's something I would say that started in my childhood. Basically, I'm a self-taught artist, but since I was little, I saw my parents making things because there was not much money at that time. And so my father was always repairing things. My mother, she's a very good seamstress. So we would get old clothes from family or neighbors, and then she would, customize them, upcycle them into new clothes. So I always saw them making things with their hands. So also, I would go and sit by my mother and pick some scraps of fabric and do things for my dolls. Or then my father once got me a book from the library, and it was about making little furniture for dolls with cardboard and all these kind of things. So I got there, this taste for making things with my hands. And then the story that we later in life would lead to collage is when I was 8 years old, traveling Master Cutler gave me a pair of scissors as a thank you for me filling up his bottle of water. These are my scissors. Obviously, people listening to the podcast won't see them, but that's the story about the scissors. And collage really came in my teenage years with art lessons. And I really liked the way of telling stories because I could not draw. I cannot draw. So then it was very easy to have these ideas and, see the pictures and create stories out of them, basically. Then collage came back to me in my 30s. So following my own personal breakthrough. So that was first a way of healing and getting in touch with my world, what's happening inside my body, what's happening inside of me. I can't put it into words, but at least I can put it into pictures. And the pictures that become triggers for words. For me, it works better when I put things into pictures and then find the words through the pictures.
I love hearing that because, you made me think of lots of things. But one of the things I thought of when you were speaking was an interview I heard recently with a woman who is a very well-known New York-based, very intellectual writer and has been writing for decades. And she said, the only way we know how to think is in words. The only way we can express ourselves and how it fits in words. She said, except with one exception, that when she spoke to some composers, they said, no, we don't really think in words. We think in music. She said, but that's the only time that we don't think in words. And I was like, intuitively, I thought, no, it just doesn't feel right. So I love to hear from somebody who says primary expression comes through imagery, secondarily transposed in some way or interpreted through words. But I think that just means you're expressing, I don't know if it's the same reality or a different reality or a set of feelings, or they don't have to be equivalent. It's like even two languages are not necessarily equivalent. They don't always have the exact same crossover of concepts. So imagery is like another language that you can use to express things in ways you can't through words.
Yeah, and also with images and collages. I will talk about collage because that's my medium, but any visual support, you can see it in many layers, many interpretations, and it can change from day to day, from the mood, how we see the perception. Whereas a word, okay, they have different meanings, different layers, but once you've written a sentence, that's the sentence. And there is musicality in language. And of course, when you write poetry, you can play more with the language. But then the picture is like, well, I mean, this common saying, like a picture is worth 1,000 words. So there's a big truth about that. I think I read in a book, I think it's by John O'Donoghue, the poet, saying that the soul speaks to us in pictures. Also, when we observe the myths of the world, we see the symbolism, common symbolisms between different cultures, different civilizations. And then for me, I see that all these mythologies, that's a big language, a big container of the soul. And each civilization used this common picture, then to this common thread, symbol, to create something out of it, a story of creation out of it.
What you were just talking about, the mythology and the different cultural or civilizations, the way they used images, is that something that influences your work, that you think about when you're creating your collages?
Not consciously, but then when I sit and watch and meditate or contemplate my artwork, sometimes, yes, there are a big influence of the Greek myths, for instance. I'm very close to the Greek culture because I lived there and in Greece. And I also went to the temples, to the archaeological sites. So, it's like I feel more my body as a big receptor. I go into place and usually I would not read about the story, but I want to go there and feel what's happening there. And then it's like, I would say, inside my body, there's a big pot cooking all these stories, and then my own imaginations. And also I'm multilingual, so the language is mixed. And then there are so many puns. Sometimes I can find a pun, but it's a pun in English. But then it's like it becomes a big game, and that's my whole universe. I mean, that's the fabric of who I am, and I cannot sometimes explain it, how something comes to be, because it's this mix of different cultures, different languages, and my own mood, my own emotions also, and my own body feeling as well.
So can you elaborate a bit more, if you don't mind, if you're comfortable doing it, a little bit more about how you used, or that collage helped you in your 30s rediscover maybe who you were or what you were becoming?
I was just making collages because I really, it was like getting caught in a picture and having it was basically instinctive. Like grab this picture. And also the act of cutting is like, tearing apart this emotion, or represented in mirrored in a picture. But then what can I take out of it? And I have the feeling always when I cut a picture and it's related to an emotion, there is a transfer in the brain that I'm cutting out something that I don't need anymore, or something out of me that's an emotion, a story that has been metabolized, digested, and then we can let it go. So that was more or less the process of really playing with these pictures, and then afterwards trying to pick the meaning. What is it reflecting back at me?
Is that part of what led you to, I was looking on your website, when you do a soul collage with somebody and you work with them one-on-one?
Soul Collage was also a process that helped me. And that was after reconnecting with the same process that I found out about Soul Collage. So I was like, oh, I can learn more. And then I really fell in love with the process. And I said, okay, I want to become a facilitator. But now I'm like more also introducing my own touch, bringing more this notion of embodiment. How can I use my body as a container, for this language of pictures, and how I can support others in their own healing journeys of making sense, bringing their own stories to life, and rebuilding also their inner chemistry and their inner well-being through the process of collage.
What would it look like if I, for example, which I actually do want to do, if I said I would like to do a soul collage with you, what would we do?
First, we would have a little talk before the session, just to know if there's something particular that you would like to get in touch with. Is there an issue, or maybe would you like to meet with an archetype of yours, or maybe you want to find an answer for a question that is going around in your own life. So that would be the preparation. And then on the day of the meeting, we would have first a meditation that is a bespoke meditation, specially created for your inquiry, for your quest. And there will be some body relaxation as well, and centering. And then the meditation is like you going onto an adventure inside your body and for your own inquiry, your own quest. And after the meditation, you will have a process of creating a collage. So I always split it in little bits. First, there is the search for picture. So you will go on a little like kind of treasure hunt for pictures, like you pick them intuitively and you've been relaxed and prepared by the meditation. So it's very, very easy. And then you will be guided to create your own card, your own collage card. And by the time it's done, after we have a reading of the card through the process, I am one who. And then I can support you in going deeper into having this dialogue, this mirroring of the picture. Also, it's how we feel with each other. So if I see, okay, she can take more questions or something comes up and you feel like going deeper, then we can go even deeper. But it's all hold in a sacred space, a space where I want the person to really feel home. So and there's freedom of expression, and of course there is this energy traveling between us, and this is basically how we finish the session. That's a card, that's a partner for life, that's a guide, and there's always more, like stories coming up from the same picture. But then you've got the first feeling through the session.
I love that, particularly as someone who is not very disciplined to sort of sit still and meditate without doing something. I always want to be doing something. And so a process like that, where there is a meditative, something's happening, but it's happening through my actions and not just by sitting still and reflecting.
And I think in any case, any meditative process that is combined with an action has this healing. We cannot heal ourselves only with our thinking. The body is quicker than the mind, and the mind needs to be reassured. So in doing something that is playful as well, which is helping our mind get quieter, but also we learn through play, and so that is safe to go there, and that is safe to express this emotion. And my emotions are welcome. I'm being seen, I'm being heard. And this thing doesn't feel that big anymore because it was big in my head, but now I've created a story. And then it's like, I can see it from the distance. So that's this whole universe you can create, and you can see your own story from a different perspective. But it's also about having an integration of your own story. I mean, not having it there suspended and, exiled, and being told if you cannot write write it with words, write it in pictures.
I love that. And not just pictures, but tangible, hands-on, physically cutting and ripping and moving around, and not digital, like a true. Do you do digital collage, or is it exclusively analog? Okay.
Yeah. Faithful to my thesis.
Yeah.
But also, as you say, that's very, very important what you say, because I really believe in the brain mirroring our actions through collage. So it's like, I'm tearing this thing out of me, I'm opening this flesh within me and letting, or going into this wound, and seeing what is there. And all this cutting and reorganizing, it's the same way our cells reorganize when we are sleeping. So for me, that's how I see it, basically, that within 1 hour, we can rewire somehow our own way of understanding ourselves, understanding our stories.
I love that aspect of it, and how, and that physical actions can, and that you said even precede, your body's ahead of your mind. So you get your body to start doing these actions and making these, and I don't even know why I'm selecting that image, because if I stop too long to think about why I picked that one and not that one, I'm going to get all tied up in my head again. What does it mean that I picked that? Just pick it, just rip it. You want to rip it, that's great. And I hadn't even thought, because all the work that I do is on a laptop. So I'm not good at technology, but it just happens that 99% of what I do is digital. And I watched a masterclass with David Carson, and he was on his knees on this giant piece of paper, and he was just ripping these and creating, and he's making patterns, and even just the sound of the paper. I was like, oh, it's so cool that actually nothing I do makes sound except like a tick on the keyboard. So there's like the sound, there's the physical motion of it. Your eyes are engaged. You're physically, like, your body is doing it. And I love the idea that your body's ahead of your mind. I mean,
in the sense that, like, to make it clear, because it can sound that I see the head and the body.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, but in the sense that it's the culture that has made us separate, because the head is not away from the body, it's part of the body. The mind is part of the body, but the way we've been made to think and to feel and to repress our emotions, we've been cut out. So that's why I said the instinct, the body is a bit ahead, and the mind needs reassurance because we are looking for safety, and this is the way we've been wired for survival. But through these little processes, especially when I'm guiding people that are looking through their own stories of trauma, the process of really doing something hand-on with the collage, with the pictures, with cutting, is a kind of their own process of finding safety for their stories, for themselves through this. And that's when the magic happens. And sometimes they're not even aware of it in the moment, but then suddenly there is this illumination in the face, in the eyes. Something shifts, like I really see, like something shifts very lightly. But then they see it by the end of the session.
It sounds like an amazing process, and I wasn't kidding. I actually would like to do it. And I need, I think, constant reminding that the whole duality of mind and body is not true, that divorcing our intellect from our physical intelligence or instinct is totally misguided. I grew up in that tradition, so it's a constant process of unlearning for me to.
I mean, so did I. I mean, and it's like suddenly I say, wow, like when I become safe in my body, I can see my brain, my mind surrendering to the body. So I don't have to be overthinking and just really following what the body is telling me. And also your, well, at least for me, being attuned, listening better to my own voice. Like there is less noise up there, and it's more like body and upper parts and head, mind communicating. It's it's like we are a whole team. It's not one taking the decision and then you do, and yeah, what did I do? So yeah, and sometimes or having the emotion lead the whole action, and then again it's like, yeah, so it's really finding this balance, this harmony between the mind, the body, the spirit.
I was going to ask you, one of the questions I had prepared for you was, there's a theme related to the feminine essence that you talk about on your website, and I wondered if you could talk a little bit more about that.
This idea of the feminine essence is more related to the connection to Gaia, to the earth, to the wisdom of the land, the wisdom of the earth, and being based also through the seasons and through the cycles. And when you have a cyclical body, it's like having this tuning of being with the seasons of the land and the seasons of the body. And through my art, what I aim to express is this tension between my cultural being, my conditioning, and my wild self that I remember when I was a child, when I was in nature, and this connection I had, and this kind of carefree spirit that I was, and trying to metabolize, to find again this connection now as an adult, as grown up. How can I bring the balance between the two? And having this longing really to be more and more close to the wisdom of the earth.
How does that affect your art, your collage?
I think it's more a collage. I've observed that over the last years, it's been more and more minimalistic. The cutting becomes a bit, and the language becomes a bit sharper. There's no very simple, very minimalistic. I also have more feminine figures, feminine bodies being featured. And also always finding a combination between the natural and the cultural, having an element of nature. Also going with the emotions, what's happening within me. I cannot express what's going within me and what's going within my own body. But also having always this thinking of delivering something, a universal message. Like I always have this mind, who could it be for? Like, who is that unknown person that could adopt this baby into their home?
One of the things that I find interesting, and I wouldn't have thought of this except I spoke to a photographer named Scott, and he does a lot of work in natural environments, and he puts himself, so he does self-portraits in natural environments. And part of that was his, not a response to, but exactly in this idea of nature as the feminine and the masculine being the domination of nature. So a little bit like the destruction of nature, and then there's the life or the survival of nature being the more feminine, or being in touch with nature being the more feminine. And his work is partly about trying to show, or for him and maybe for other men, to reconnect with that part too. So it's not men and women, it's that just human beings connecting with what we sort of call the feminine.
Yeah. That's why I say essence, because it's not about gender.
Exactly.
It's about something. I mean, our own heartbeat is like the pulse. That's the pulse of Gaia. That's the pulse of the earth. We all tune somehow in the patterns of nature. We are part of this pattern as well. Our body is part of this pattern. And my quest is in returning more and more to this pattern. And it's like, being totally disconnected then from what's happening somehow in the human world, like all this in too much interaction and hustle, and it's slow.
So as far as all of these different influences and themes and things that inform your work, either consciously or not consciously, when you look back at your work, what kinds of general similarities or big picture things do you see in your work, which may have evolved over time? What do you see when you look at it?
I would say the themes that I've put in my statement as an artist, which are resilience, memory, and identity. Also, my collage is somehow they are a bit of a journal of my own journey. So there is always this theme of resilience, regeneration, identity. Who am I? How do I move into this world? What's changing in my body, where I am at? And then memories, my own experiences. How can I turn them into art? How can I heal myself, my story? But it's also memories of stories that are not mine, but that are part of my ancestors, and especially the women of my lineage. And their voice is coming also through my collages, and what I feel called to do or to create. So yeah, it's all interconnected, and different dimensions of time, my own present, my own past, my own future, but also the women before me. So I cannot walk without them or without their stories.
One of the projects that I saw on your website that called a bit to me, because, and we've talked a bit about what you can express through words and what you can express through images, the project that was the collages with the haiku, the poems. And can you tell me more about that?
So this is a collaboration with Greek poet called Kostas Linos. And again, that's another story of how two people meet and then we create something. Yeah, the story with Kostas, just I was visiting an art exhibition about independent artist platforms. And then there was this poem on the wall, and I just read it. And there was one line that really kept my attention. The translation of this line is, the winds have matured. And then I talk to him and I say, I'm very touched by what you wrote, and I really like this sentence, this verse, the winds have matured. And then he contacted me throughout our conversations. He once suggested that we could do a project together. So he said, okay, I'm going to send you some haikus, and you're going to choose 15 of them. And then how do you feel about illustrating them? So this is how we came up with this project. And it was all done in, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I read the poem, and then I saw pictures. I was really, literally, poop, poop, like little bulbs.
That's great.
Opening there in my head. And I said, okay, I cannot stop. So I was like 3 weeks nonstop collaging and preparing the pictures, because it was like, I didn't want the pictures to escape me. And that was a really interesting adventure, how words can become pictures. And at the same time, pictures, within the book, they create their own stories. and it's like layers and layers. So if you really want to amuse yourself at discovering more stories within the book, it's like forever.
Just feels like somehow you're a natural translator between the verbal world and the image world. And I do not do that very naturally. So I think it's really amazing when you can read something and immediately your mind is bubbling with visual images that relate to that aren't literal, right? You're not just literally taking words and saying the wind has matured. So you're like, I'm going to somehow put the wind, and I'm going to somehow it's not like that at all, right? It's just more of the essence of the piece.
Yes, exactly. And sometimes it's also the feeling, what comes out of it. And sometimes what's interesting there is that sometimes the pictures can be very far away from the words. And sometimes I can go with something very literal. Like I say, okay, this is 1, 2, 3. But then combined together, there is something else coming. And I mean, it can go on forever.
Wow, it really sounds like you love what you do.
I do. I really, I mean, when I'm alone, I'm doing it. And sometimes I have these existential questions. But then when I get triggered, talk about it, I'm like, yeah. And that is, yeah.
What if I asked you more directly where you see vulnerability either within your work or within your life? What would you say?
Well, I see it in this moment. So,
That's good.
right now, that's a moment of vulnerability between nearly two strangers. Like, you have more information about me than I have about you. And then it's like this conversation is going to be heard by many people. So we don't know. But then there is this consciousness, this container that you're holding. So let's be vulnerable and see what happens. And then I trust myself. There is also this thing. There is this line. It's like there's fragility, there is courage, and also there is this connection, this sharing. I mean, there are so many layers, like just by looking at this moment. But then there is this magic to say, okay, this conversation can be heard by someone who might need these words in this very same moment. And I'm like, wow, and that's also the same reason why when I started making art, I have no degree in art, I'm self-taught, and I was like, okay, where are you going, girl? And the world is not tender, like, who do you think you are? But then I was like so deep within me, convinced that I can touch someone's heart with my work. And I know, because I know when I'm touched by someone's art, someone's words, someone's songs, even someone's presence, it has changed my universe. Imagine that I can do this for someone else. And I said, that one person, that first person that cried at a piece of art that I made, or that came with a nice word, oh, thank you. For me, that was the whole world. I mean, I didn't need it anymore. So this is, showing up. And it's also, I'm coming here with my humanity, not with my perfection, with my accent, with my sometimes, okay, it doesn't matter. I don't think when you go to the essence of things and you really speak from your heart, people hear the heart, they don't hear the mistakes or whatever. Just being true. And and I'd say just being human. Like, here we are, there's this thin line. How can we draw a bit further? But I also trust myself that I'm strong enough to take what it needs to be taken. How shall I say it now? That I can put up with whatever consequences of my words.
You're willing to accept whatever comes.
Yeah. But that's also the game of vulnerability, in a sense. Like, it's you are exposed to be wounded. So how much can I take? And sometimes, yes, my boundaries may be pushed. Oh, I thought I had it. No, something comes, but this is how you grow. That's the praise to be taken.
I really love how you expressed that. That was lovely. Thank you for that. And I think it's something I'm only discovering for myself just by trying to go through a process of becoming more open and moving past the idea of vulnerability being a weakness. But it does require discernment, because you need to know, like you said, you need to be feeling where your boundaries are. And if your boundaries are being passed, you need to pull back, because you'll know that that's too far for you. You need to have that discernment. And opening up is not like it's a difficult thing to do. It can be it's not painful even from the reception from outside. It's literally the pain of opening, like physically, or not physically, but you know what I'm also making motions with my hand that nobody can see, but you see what I'm talking about.
That's perfect. I love that. But that's correct. The body is opening, the heart is opening. I mean, when you go with it's not just the metaphor of the open heart. Like, when a person with an open heart has an open chest, the person, it's all body language, and sometimes you can see. You're totally there. So yeah. So, and the body is leading you. Your gestures, they're leading you into opening more. So your body is leading your way. So that's wonderful. I really, yeah. And you have this moment, this movement forward, like this engagement, but that's connection. Yeah, deep breath.
Okay, who's interviewing who, Sandra? Nobody's interviewing. We're having a conversation. It's just perfect.
Yeah, that's a conversation.
But thank you for that. I loved how you expressed that, and that did something in me. So thank you for that. That was really good. When I approached you to do this, to talk with me today, is there anything that you anticipated talking about or that you want to say that I haven't asked you about?
No, I think I even said more than I would say. No, I mean, I'm just very grateful that you invited me and that you gave me this space and time, like to share what I love to do and to be heard. I mean, more than even if my art is visual, my longing is to be heard more than seen.
Sandra, thank you so much for your time. It was really a lovely conversation. I enjoyed it a lot.
Thank you. Thank you really for the invitation.